Hello, welcome to today's episode of Juicing the Numbers, your statistics and sports podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joshua Tracy.
And I am one of your hosts, Corwin Heller.
And it is Sunday, July 11th, which means it is the last day of baseball games as we head into the All-Star break. Games will resume on Thursday with a singular game between the Yankees and Red Sox. All other teams, the remaining 28 teams, will pick up play on Friday, the 15th, 16th. You decide. I don't give a shit. So we
The
figure we talk a little
16th.
bit. It is the 16th. Okay. Figure we talk a little bit about where we are with some standings and what teams should be on the lookout for in the second half. Talk a little bit about some injuries, and as we're speaking now, the MLB draft is underway. I guess we'll start there because why not? And the first player taken, I think we all thought, reasonably so, would be Jack Leiter, who has been lighting it up at Vanderbilt all season and has made Vanderbilt appointment television during his starts there this season. And instead, with the first overall pick in the MLB draft, the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that could definitely use pitching, as every team could use pitching, but bad teams especially could use future pitching. Instead opted to take a catcher, which is an interesting choice, opting to take Henry Davis out of University of Louisville.
Louisville.
Sorry, you're right. University of
Louisville.
Louisville. Uh,
L1C4.
just to put in perspective, Jack Leiter this season has a record of 11-4, a 2.13 ERA, pitching 18 games, one of which was a shutout. He's thrown 110 innings. He had allowed 30 runs, only 26 of which were earned, 14 home runs, 45 walks, 179 strikeouts, and 110 innings. Yeesh. It's a strikeouts per nine of 14.6. His whip was 0.845, 0.845. His hits per nine was a touch below 4, sitting at 3.9, and his strikeout to walk ratio was just below 4 at 3.98. So some might say, "Goddamn, what a season!" That someone might be me. Corwin, what do you think of this?
On one hand, like Henry Davis, of what I've read on him in the past hour, because I'm not a baseball prospect or evaluator, I should say, um, is he has a tremendous bat and really great arm. So the quality of the pick itself, I can get over. Like he's still a good player. If your guys like him, this isn't football where there is genuine consensus picks that are, you know, a significantly higher success rate than what you would find in baseball, where, by all means, for 80% of first overall picks, when it's not a quarterback, you're going to be a sure thing. Just because of the difficulty of evaluation and how close, college is to the NFL in terms of finding those, key principal characteristics and things like that. But at the same time, you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you have probably the worst reputation in all of baseball. You have a team with one star in Cabrian Hayes, who's in his rookie year, because no one else on your team is of note. I mean, Adam Frazier is an all-star. How many people do you think know who Adam Frazier is? How many people do you think know who Cabrian Hayes is? Unless you're, an active baseball fan, you don't know those names. No one on the Pirates is a household name. And you have a guy like Jack Leiter, who, even Kumar Rocker, who just went 10th overall because of concerns with his fastball. Yeah, he's probably not going to be the best singular prospect in the class. Jack Leiter easily can be by a mile. I mean, he's as close to a consensus top overall, sure thing, MLB ready pitchers you're going to find in a MLB draft. And he's a name that people would recognize and people can be happy with. Come watch the Pirates to see and get excited for the Pirates to see. And they go with the guy that nobody really knows outside of, avid college baseball or MLB fans. So quality of the player itself, I think, is at the end of the day something you can stomach and something you can accept and something you can say, hey, these guys know more than me. If they prefer it and that's where they want, to put the resources for this team, go ahead. But when it comes to team branding and trying to get fans to give a shit about Pirates baseball, I think it's a huge miss.
Yeah, it's really tough. And obviously, Corwin and I can't sit here and say this is verifiably the wrong choice for all the reasons he laid out. It's baseball. It's a crapshoot. We're not going to be able to make a decent evaluation on this until maybe 5 years from now. And even then, depending on how much major league service time each player has had, it might not even be viable yet. Tough to say. It's a sport that requires a lot of patience. However, this is going to be, no one wants to end up like the Houston Astros of 1994, 93, when everyone and their mother said, hey, take Derek Jeter. And the Houston Astros said, nope, Phil Nevin. And that's why Derek Jeter got taken second overall by the Yankees. And Phil Nevin is now the Yankees third base coach. And everyone has to remind people that that was the guy that got taken before Jeter. Because the thing about going with the guy that everyone thinks is going to go first is that if it doesn't pan out, everyone goes, well, I mean, yeah, life's a crapshoot. Who knows?
Right.
But if you don't take him first and it works out for the team that did take him, everyone's going to look at you like you're the biggest fucking asshole who overthought an easy choice.
Drafting Derek Jeter and him turning into Phil Nevin doesn't get you fired. Drafting Phil Nevin because you prefer him to a guy like Derek Jeter turning into Derek Jeter, and Phil Nevin turning into Phil Nevin gets you fired. And we see that a lot with NFL teams where there's a lot of concern or there's a lot of question marks, and it may not necessarily be what's right for the team, but people are so vocal about wanting a certain player that teams will go with the safe pick, and you'll see teams go with, very boring consensus picks because they have to save their job, or, they want to stick with the quarterback that didn't really pan out the first couple of years. You're trying to change their environment, but shit, there's a good quarterback at our draft slot. We kind of have to take him because we need to buy ourselves some time and some runway here when it comes to, the team. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the Pirates scouts, as much as we can joke about them, know a hell of a lot more about baseball and watched a lot more film and saw these guys in person a hell of a lot more than either of us did, because our experience is pretty close to zero. But yeah, we talk about baseball because shit, man, we got to talk about something. Not much is going on.
You want to hear my conspiracy theory?
Yes.
The Pirates didn't take Jack Leiter first overall because they thought he might ask for more money as a signing bonus.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge thing with the MLB draft. Is, I mean, the Orioles do it all the time. I saw a bunch of people on Twitter just hoping and praying that they don't do it again this year, and they did. But they'll take guys that are significantly worse than their draft slot ahead of guys that are just universally thought of as better players because, hey, we can save some money and put that money elsewhere in the draft. So,
and if you think to yourself, why would an organization do that to the future talent pool of their own players for what is a relatively insignificant amount of money in the short term, midterm, and long term? It's because they're cheap as shit. Like, they could also afford to pay their minor leaguers a fair wage for a full year, let alone just during the playing season, for a very nominal amount of money to a multi-million-dollar, $2 billion corporation. And they also choose not to do that. So yeah, we're talking penny pinching losers all over the place. So
Yeah.
Because, obviously it's easy for us rational people who understand that investment costs money. And in order to be good in sports, you have to have good players to sit back and say, hey, if you spend, I don't know, an extra $1 million, which is not a lot of money in the world of business in general, especially sports, then your team could be significantly better off 5 years from now, making playoff runs, generating better ad revenue because you get better TV deals, like all sorts of things. But the way the front offices operate is on the assumption of you should go fuck yourself. And here we are.
I'm a Toygarian. Your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me. Only money.
Essentially, that's every MLB front office.
Watto is every MLB GM.
Yes. Yeah, the
except for
Jedi
AJ
mind
Preller
tricks,
because he loves to spend money.
the Jedi mind tricks in this case being statistics and common sense. So I don't have anything. I also know nothing about Henry Davis. I can tell you his slash line for the season in 50 games and 228 plate appearances. He has 68 hits, 9 of which have been doubles, no triples, 15 home runs. He has gotten 48 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 3 caught stealings, 31 walks, 24 strikeouts, as a batting line, I should say, of 370, 482, 663 for an 1145 OPS, which is really, really fucking good. So it's not here to say that Henry Davis is a bad pick by any means, because I'm sure he'll be a good player. And whether or not he stays with catcher is always tough because usually the best hitting catchers get told to play a position that's not catcher so that they can have more longevity, aka what happened to Bryce Harper, who was originally a catcher and got put in the outfield because he had a really good bat, and catchers don't play every day and they often have shorter careers and they can't run as fast because there's a whole bunch of physical reasons why you wouldn't want to be a catcher if you're very talented. So whether he stays a catcher or not, I guess doesn't really matter right now. The fact of the matter is he seems like to be a good hitter. So you take what you can get. Take what you can get. Righty. He's a righty.
How old's Buster Posey?
Buster Posey?
34.
I was going to say in my mind he's 90, but in reality I was going to say 32. So 34 makes sense.
He seems 90 because he's a catcher and has been playing for 12 seasons. Pretty good.
And he's been a catcher for like most of it. Like he plays some first base, but not a lot.
Not often. But 12 seasons is not an outrageous amount of time for a Hall of Fame level player like Buster Posey is. But because he's a catcher, that's, like Yadier Molina is an insane longevity for a career. Insane amount of time.
Insane in the membrane.
Insane in the brain.
All right, so Jack Leiter ends up going to the Texas Rangers, which again couldn't be a bad pick for any team. It's also tough in comparison to football because you can look at a team that needed a corner takes a corner and you expect that guy to be on the roster the following season. You draft a guy in April and you expect him to be on the team in September, starting for you game one, which this is not the case. So it's tough to look at, we'll get to some teams that took position players, but it's tough to say the shortstop. Yes, they needed a shortstop because chances are that shortstop's not coming up for 2 to 4 seasons conservatively. And at that point, it's going to be like, what's your team even fucking look like there, buddy? But again, never a wrong time to take Jack Leiter. Afterwards, the Detroit Tigers took Jackson Job, who's to say, right-handed pitcher out of Heritage Hall High School. This is actually a back-to-back high school pick, with the next pick also being a high school student, which is just wild.
Apparently, he's only been pitching for a year.
I'm not surprised because the thing about high school and college baseball is that you're going to get moved around a lot as your body continues to develop and you figure out what position you're best suited for. You know what I mean? Obviously there are people who I pitched in middle school, so I'm just going to be pitching in high school too. And then I would pitch in high school. I'll try to pitch in college. But if you end up being an outfielder with an amazing arm, they're going to be like, hey, you thought about pitching? Because you just threw like 90 flat-footed in the outfield. And then you get guys like, I guess this guy who's like throwing rope. So I can't say I'm surprised there.
You said throwing rope, and the first thing I thought of was shooting rope, and I was like, "What? Where are
Very
you
different.
getting this shit from?" Yes. Oh fuck.
I have scouting grades on Jackson Jobe, which we've never actually talked about before, so that's interesting. His fastball is graded 60, a 70 slider, 55 curveball, and a 60 changeup. His control got rated a 50, and overall he got a 60. So for anyone unfamiliar with baseball grades, they run on a scale from 20 to 80. So he's slightly above average in all his categories, but he's very young, and I'm assuming they see a lot of promise in what he's been throwing. The fact that
70 slider on an 18-year-old kid who's been pitching for
exactly what I was about to say.
What the fuck?
That's pretty fucking good. It's like, that's kind of ridiculous.
You don't see 70 grades in prospects almost ever, let alone a high school prospect like that.
Yeah, and if he's throwing that well, and a 60 fastball, like, he's only 18, and from the picture that he has on his prospect page, looks to be a relatively slimmer dude. Like, you put him in a weight room with a good training program for how to shape pitches and get better arm action, like, that dude's going to be slanging it.
Reference, Wander Franco. Sorry to cut you off like that.
No, go ahead.
Wander Franco as a prospect, number 1 overall prospect for like the past like 2.5 years, is a 70 grade overall. So a 70 grade slider for an 18-year-old kid throwing, for a year is pretty outrageous.
Yeah, and the fact that he's 60 overall, like, that's also rather high. Like, it's scouts aren't nice for no reason. Like they'll rate you a 20.
Adley Rushman, number 1 pick last year, number 1 overall prospect in baseball right now. Now that Wander Franco got called up, does not have anything graded at 70.
Also, for reference, because it's been talked about a ton, Jack Leiter, his fastball is also rated a 70. And you hear about his fastball all the time because he throws like 96 or 98 or some shit as a 21-year-old. So the fact that, we can compare that straight off, and we're talking about a slider on a kid, like, Jack Leiter is also graded as a 60 grade overall prospect. Obviously, we're looking at just the grades that have been assigned and not really much of anything else because we don't know anything and we're bad at this. But still, I mean, it should tell you quite a lot, especially, as Corwin keeps saying, as a kid who's 18 at a high school. So, goddamn. Our next high school prospect is our next pick, which is from the Boston Red Sox, drafting in the number 4 slot, Marcelo Myers, shortstop out of Eastlake High School in California. He's a prospect. He plays shortstop. Who knows what it matters? Like, if you're a Red Sox fan, you shouldn't worry about the future of Xander Bogaerts. He'll probably be there forever. You just signed to an extension. Again, this is just a guy who plays shortstop. It doesn't matter yet. Neat.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But he was in discussion for the first overall pick, was kind of seen as the top what's the term? High school prospect. Thank you. Good job, Corwin, with words. So this was widely seen as a very great pick for the Red Sox, to pretty much everyone's dismay.
Plus a lefty bat. All the good stuff there. Right-handed glove, of course. He's playing shortstop. They're all right-handed gloves. So that brings us to our next pick.
Get into baseball,
Yeah, that's what kept you from breaking in. Although, if you dove at anything, you'd probably stop it. You'd have such reach.
You got me there, yeah. Although there's no way I would just have to dive in front of it. I'm not getting my glove. I just have to go full goalie and just get my body in front of it because I don't have that coordination.
Right. All right. So next up, the Baltimore Orioles took Colton Cowser, an outfielder out of Sam Houston State University. Lefty bat, righty glove, 55 overall graded prospect. I don't have stats for him. Sorry, Colton. Let me try another place. Colton Cowser. I went to the stats portion of his baseball profile, and it didn't exist. It said nothing here, and I was like, shit. Here we go. His slash line in college this season is 374, 490, 680, 1170. In 55 games and 253 at bats at 76 hits, 10 doubles, 2 triples, 16 home runs, 52 RBI, 17 stolen bases, 3 caught stealings, 42 walks to 32 strikeouts. Obviously, you can't look at an entire kid's career because it's only 3 years of college, and the idea of it is that you're supposed to be continuously improving. So it's not like, you can look at a guy like Gleyber Torres, who was great his first couple years and struggled, and feel very comfortable lumping all those things in. Or you look at a guy who took an appreciable step forward year over year, like I don't know who's been a guy like that recently. Cedric Mullins, and be like, obviously he's progressed, and we're going to count that. It's a little bit different looking at college stats because it's like obviously you do expect the senior preparing to be an MLB ready prospect to have improved year over year. So you don't want to, you'd be kind of kneecapping everybody if you counted in their earlier seasons because of the linear method of progression. But at the same time, at least a small sample sizes of 55 games. So it doesn't really mean much. But anyway, marching forward, I'm just going to actually read names so we can get past this a little bit quicker. Arizona Diamondbacks took Jordan Lawler, a shortstop out of Jesuit Prep in Dallas, Texas. The Kansas City Royals took Frank Mozzicato, a left-handed pitcher out of East Catholic High School in Connecticut. The Colorado Rockies, with the 8th overall pick, took Benny Montgomery, the outfielder out of Redland High School in Pennsylvania. The LA Angels took Sam Bachman, right-handed pitcher out of Miami University, Ohio. And then to round out the top 10, which is all we're going to do, partially because that's all that's out, but it's also probably all we would do anyway, is Kumar Rocker, right-handed pitcher out of Vanderbilt University. Kumar Rocker being the other half of the ridiculous duo that Vanderbilt has had. Kumar Rocker's stats this season is a 2.73 ERA, 14 wins and 4 losses in 20 games with 1 complete game, no shutouts, 122 innings pitched, 75 hits allowed, 43 runs, 37 of them were earned, 39 walks, also 179 strikeouts. Although Jack Leiter had only allowed 3 doubles, which is stupid. Kumar Rocker had allowed 20. And while Jack Leiter had allowed 14 home runs, Kumar Rocker only allowed 8. His batting average against was 170. And there's been some concern, as Corwin said a little bit earlier, with the fastball as the year progressed. But again, these guys, well, they're, early 20s, for some sports that could be old, but or at least like not young, I guess I'll say. They're fucking young, and you work yourself up to an innings total over time. Not many rookie pitchers throw like 200 innings. Most rookie pitchers have an innings limit as they build up and get used to burning through their arm like that.
162 game season.
Yeah, exactly. So, he threw 120 college innings this season. If he were to play for the Mets next season, which I doubt he'll be on the big league roster, especially with the Mets having a very good pitching rotation. But assuming he did for whatever reason, it might be the same amount of innings, and then just getting him used to throwing his fastball with with some consistency over the course of that entire time before they start increasing any type of innings. So, what do you think about him falling this far, though?
God, I wish I could have any actual insight on this other than I guess teams were really concerned about the fastball, or there's something else going on, or it's a surprise because he came into the season number 1, and we saw him pitch a 19 strikeout no-hitter, and that's just fucking outrageous and blew up his reputation. Finally got him, or what I should say is, he was a college pitcher who was a household name because of it. So seeing him fall down to 10 when he's kind of been in the discussion of, top overall pick, and then it was, all right, him or Leiter top 2, and then it's like, all right, we have these 2 high school shortstops. So, he'll be a top 4, top 5 pick. And then it's like, all right, well, maybe he's going to fall more. And he ends up at 10 going to the Mets. Great place for him to go. But surprising only because I don't fucking know any better, man. I don't know. This ain't the NFL. I don't have any information here.
Yeah. Obviously, we're not going to know it either, and a lot of it's going to come down to scouting. Even more of it's going to come down to scouting than the NFL one, because with the NFL, there's so many positions. You're going to take chances on guys that fit a positional need. Because you can't just take a cornerback and stick him at defensive end. That's not how it works. Whereas in baseball, if you have like 6 shortstops and you need someone to play second or someone to play third, you could just take your worst defensive shortstop and put him at second or third, and then, hey, look, you got a second baseman. So it's really, it ain't oranges to oranges. It ain't fucking apples to oranges. It ain't fucking pears to we're talking oranges and dynamite.
Be compared.
We are talking vastly different objects. And so I would also be interested in hearing from scouts at some point later on in the process as to why they think Kumar Rocker fell so far. Seeing him in a Mets uniform will be pretty cool. I wish it was a different team, but still in New York. But life, you can't get what you want. Now, a former guest on our podcast, Randy Wilkins, when he was on the podcast, and we asked him for a hot take in baseball, he said that he believes that the MLB draft should be abolished and instead should be a player pool where players can negotiate themselves to be added to teams' rosters instead of them being picked, because it's having them be picked in the manner that they're currently picked is anti-labor, because then they enter into a system where, if you get drafted in like anything after the first round, really, your signing bonus is probably not going to be quite enough for you to live on during your time in the minors, and you'll have to rely on some thin years due to the circumvention of wage that the MLB employs for the minor leagues. So I figure this would be a good time as any to ask you if you've thought about that at all since Randy brought it up, and if you have any opinions on it now.
The socialist in me wants to say, yes, fuck MLB. They don't deserve to have this kind of control over, their labor in the manner in which they do, and, the unfair labor practices of essentially, controlling the rights to people and their livelihood for 6 years and manipulating that in the fashion in which they do. Because quote unquote, oh, it's a dream to play baseball. Oh, it's an honor. You got to earn it. Blah, blah, whatever the bullshit they spiel. As much as I hate that, I am an avid college football fan, and the way college football recruiting works is the haves get all of the top players, and the have-nots get the scraps, and that leads to Alabama going to the national championship every fucking year, and Clemson going to the national championship every single year, and Ohio State going to the national championship every single year. And now we have 3 teams playing in a single game, and that just doesn't work out well. So I know why they need to have the draft, why that system, professional sports really doesn't work all that well because of it. Obviously it won't be nearly as crazy as college football is, because at the end of the day, there's not 129 teams in MLB. There's 30. So there's significantly less teams fighting for these players. But I still think it's not exactly the best way to go about making fair labor practices. I think we should just kind of fucking pay people a livable wage, because that having to change the entire system because MLB owners are fucking cheap assholes isn't the solution we should be striving for.
Yeah, and the draft came about in the MLB for a very similar reason. The Yankees were going around and signing everybody because they had seemingly a countless amount of dollars, and teams from less sizable media markets with less money from ownership at a time when that was actually a genuine excuse. We're talking like the 20s, 30s, and 40s. We're not talking about in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s when TV deals became more of a thing, and all teams had more revenue because of increased quantities of revenue sharing, stuff like that. We're talking truly when the Yankees actually did have significant swing your dick around money against other teams' ability. And the draft was a way to keep them from just doing that. And we even see a form of that restriction today in how MLB handles international signings. You can only there's an allotted amount of international signing bonus money that is distributed based on a pool. And then you can trade your share, or some share of your pool of that money, of that pool of money, and use that to sign international free agents. The Yankees did assign Jason Dominguez. People do it. And so I do get it.
We should say that only counts for teams that are not the Braves.
Yeah, and the Orioles, who will never use it. Cheapskate fucks. Obviously, increasing the wage of the minor leaguers is the biggest, most obvious step that would do the most immediate good. But it is still an interesting concept to wonder how removing the draft, which absolutely benefits, because I think one of the biggest other question marks I have is what would happen to the draft if there was no sliding scale of, in the MLB's case, expected signing bonuses, or the NFL's case, pay. And instead of everything getting dropped appreciably for the people at the top, you just raised everybody's by a lot. Because theoretically, if you got drafted, they fucking wanted you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's first overall or 150th overall, they fucking wanted you. And if they wanted you, they should have to pay you to do it, because it doesn't really matter when they picked you. What matters is that they did pick you.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be a level of care assigned to that, the same way you can't just have a kid and not take care of the kid. If you have a kid, you either got to find someone else who wants the kid, or you got to take care of the kid, or you're going to get sued by the state. And you would think something like that would also apply to people that have no ability to dictate their own terms because of the structure of how their labor gets put into the market. And I think I've come around a lot on Randy's point on it, because that's the part, it's the biggest part, that if you want to play professional baseball or any sport, but let's keep it with baseball, there is a barrier to your entry, and that barrier is the draft. And that you cannot circumvent, really. You can try to do it by playing in foreign leagues and then getting signed from there, but it's not the same if you want to do it through, a traditional minor league route. And that being the barrier of entry, especially early on in your career when you have the ability to make the biggest difference, hit free agency earlier, get a bigger contract, that type of stuff. The fact that you must do it through this way he's right. It's absolutely anti-labor. And I think the more I've thought about it, the less I care about what would happen from a protecting the broke team's standpoint, because
you're a Yankees fan.
No, because if the Orioles have, what was their pick number? 5? Yeah, 5. The 5th overall pick, and they're still dodging? Why do they deserve to have the 5th overall pick? If you're going to take a guy 30th overall, give him not a huge signing bonus, and then pay him a shit salary anyway, why should you get the chance to take him there? Why not go to a team that would actually pay him money to play baseball.
Why not just set draft slots as a fixed salary?
And I think that would probably be if this was actually negotiated instead of, I guess Randy in this case being made emperor of baseball, that would probably be the middle ground, which is we're enforcing a minimum $65,000 a year threshold for minor leaguers or something like that. Because there's obviously no way baseball would do this, but
that wasn't even what I was saying. Just like in football, the draft slot you get taken at has a fixed salary. The first overall pick gets this amount. The second overall pick gets this amount. So it's not about getting underslotted guys. It's not about the Orioles taking a guy, who's ranked, 15th overall on the big board at 5 because they could get him for less amount of money. It's just pick the best player available because he's getting paid the same amount no matter what.
Right. A uniform pay thing, and it actually being a decent pay. There's a lot of things. Plus, I think I'm drawn a little bit to the chaos idea of the anarchist notion of draftless society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It has definitely been something I've chewed on every time I've thought about. Well, Vanderbilt this season because of Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, but draft prospects in general since Randy brought it up. So thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Randy.
All right, so we'll see how the rest of the draft shakes out, and we'll see if we get any same draft season debuts. It's not very common, but it does happen, so that would be interesting to see if anybody actually manages to do that. We were hoping that if the Pirates did end up drafting Jack Leiter, there was a chance he could pitch this season with the Pirates since they're so fucking bad. Like, why not? But chances are it's not going to happen. There's also a chance that if he had gone to a team that was bad last season, high enough to draft him, and then good enough this year, that they might need an extra arm for a playoff push, like I don't know, maybe the Red Sox. Then you could make a debut that way, but that is also not going to happen since he's on the Texas Rangers and they are doing. Let's check. Bad. 18 and a half games out of the division. So.
I'm really annoyed he went to the Rangers because that has to be the team I give a shit least.
Yeah.
I give the least amount of shits about him pitching at. I mean, him going 1 overall to the Pirates would be crazy because I'm a former Pirates fan and I'd love to see them be good again. Detroit has such a great young stable of pitchers that would be great to see. Him going to the Orioles would be cool to see them actually try and put this rebuild together. All these other teams in the top 10, there's some storyline of, oh, that would be pretty cool to see. With the Rangers, I just don't give a shit in any capacity. So whatever.
Yeah, it's a boring team in a unsexy division. Because, even if you went to like the Rockies, which is a boring team right now, it's the NL West. And it's like, oh shit, okay, NL West. Like, we'll see a matchup against the Dodgers, see a matchup against the Padres, against the Giants. The AL West, see a matchup against the Mariners. See a matchup against
even if he went to the Diamondbacks, they fucking suck. But Zach Gallen's a great young pitcher. Jack Leiter could come in there and, perform well with him sooner than later. And we could, again, see him against the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, all these other good teams. The Rangers are just, I can't remember the last time a top pick went somewhere I cared so little about.
Yeah.
Like Myles Garrett going to the Browns was like, well, at least the Browns can start doing something, or like they can't fuck up this pick, stuff like that, Yeah.
I know. All right, let's talk about some MLB news then. Ronald Acuña Jr. is out for the season. He had an ACL tear while trying to field a fly ball off the bat of Jazz Chisholm as the Braves played the Marlins the other day. Landed awkwardly and actually tore his right ACL. He's going to be out 9 to 10 months is the recovery window that I saw. So that would put him being back sometime around February, March of next season. So theoretically, he should be back during spring training. He, depending on how his recovery goes, might not make opening day, but shouldn't be out long afterwards. Fuck, man. This is so shit for so many reasons. I guess we'll start firstly with the specifically Ronald Acuña Jr. reasons, which is he's been having a great season. He his slash line is a 283, 33, 94, 596. That's a 990 OPS, a 156 OPS plus. He was heading into the All-Star break with 24 home runs and 17 stolen bases. So the 40 season was definitely still on. 3 stolen bases shy of being a clean 20, but still within the ballpark. And, he'd been tearing it up. And to see him go down was such a serious injury too. Because you see those types of players, you see a player crumple because of a bad fall or an awkward fall, and you hope maybe it's just like a twisted ankle. Because if anyone's ever twisted their ankle, I mean, like, you're going to go down if you twist your ankle. You'll be walking around fine later that day or a couple days later. But it's like the instant pain of it and that awkward feeling, like, it's immediate. And I was like really, really hoping it was something minor like that just kind of took his body by surprise and, kept him from putting serious weight on it. But it's just a fucking shame. And then the other part of it is the Braves have not been good this season. They haven't necessarily been bad. They are second in their division, sitting at an even 44 and 44. But that's obviously not good, especially in a season where you were supposed to be better. They
World Series
already
contenders for sure going into the season,
and division leaders for sure, having won their division each of the past 2 seasons. I said with a little bit too much confidence. I actually don't really remember if they won their division 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure they did. All right, hold on.
Did the Nationals go in as a wild card?
So I'm trying to remember. So in 2020,
I think they did.
First in the NL East. 2019, first in the NL East. 2018, first in the NL East. So each of the last 3 seasons. 2017, they finished third. And, Marcell Ozuna is already out for very good reason. So there's a main starting outfielder that you're short on. Ronald Acuña Jr. is now out. William Contreras has been out for a while. And the rest of your team outside of Freddie Freeman and Ozzie Albies isn't doing a lot. Austin Riley's been good, but Dansby Swanson's been shit. Guillermo Heredia's been fine. Ehire Adrianza's been fine. Like,
How's Pache? Is he still up?
No, he's down, and he was very, very bad when he was up. His OPS plus in 22 games is -7. Yeah, as a Christian Pache fantasy baseball owner, yes, it is exactly as bad as you're thinking it was. Christian Pache's line is 111, 152, 208 for an OPS of 358. So yes, Ronald Acuña Jr.'s on-base percent was 40 points higher than Christian Pache's, or Pasher, however you're supposed to pronounce it, entire OPS. It's sad times. Theoretically, he's very likely to get called back up because of this injury, but woof. It's bad. So, it is Pache, by the way. I just looked it up. Sorry, that's what I was pausing for. And so not only is this a real kick in the fucking teeth for Ronald Acuña Jr., because obviously having such a serious injury is just awful. And you gotta feel for the dude having once again just a wonderful season. You gotta fucking feel for him. And it's tough for Braves fans everywhere because here's the face of your franchise, one of the few things that you still have to look forward to in your lopsided season, going down and very likely taking your playoff hopes with them.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck looking at Christian Pache's stats. This is pretty crazy. This is pretty wild all around.
Pretty wild and crazy stuff. Yeah, it's bad. So let me ask you this, Corwin.
Okay.
Are the Braves sellers now? Because we talked about a while ago the fact that the Braves have not extended Freddie Freeman yet. And that was very weird.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't think they were going to trade him, but it was weird. And now they probably don't make the playoffs. They very likely don't make the playoffs. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. Because ahead of them in the standings is Cincinnati at 47 and 42, which I'm so happy about. And these are the wild card standings, I should say. Cincinnati, the Dodgers at 55 and 35, the Padres at 53 and 39. So obviously those two teams are taking it. So they're 10 games out of those two teams. And then there's still games out from Cincinnati, and Philly is only a half a game behind them. So they could theoretically sell if they were iffy on bringing back Freeman. I don't. Tell me what you think.
If they have contracts that they don't plan on having next year, or if they don't plan on bringing Freddie Freeman back, which would be a wild decision. If they have other players that are on expiring deals, absolutely trade them because you're not going to the playoffs this year, and if you are, not having multiple top guys, it's not looking good. I mean, their pitching's a mess, their batting's a mess now without Acuña there. You got to be sellers because you're a team that's won the NL East the past 3 seasons. You're a team that, with Acuña there, with your guys there, you're a World Series contender. You can't sell your future because your future is still a contending team. But my goodness, it's not this season.
And and there is still the option on the table for them to pull the exact shit that the Yankees did when they traded Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs in 2016 to just turn around and sign him in the offseason anyway. Just because the contract is expiring doesn't mean that Freddie Freeman can never play for the Braves again. His contract expires at the end of the year. If you're not going to make the playoffs with him, you could trade him to get some capital in return and then just sign him in the offseason. There's nothing stopping the Braves from doing that either. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to see what else they're expiring. So also expiring this season, contract-wise, is Travis d'Arnaud, who is currently hurt. So not a lot of trade value there. Charlie Morton, which could be an interesting piece to trade to a playoff contender. Drew Smyly, which, that's a guy.
Used to be a bigger name.
Yeah. Ahira Adrianza, his contract expires at the end of the season. Shane Green, I didn't realize was still on that team. Pablo Sandoval, which would be hilarious if he got traded. Abraham Almonte. Let's see. And then 2 more. Jesse Chavez and Jonathan Lucroy, who I also did not realize was on that team. There's also a couple interesting guys whose contracts are expiring in 2023 if they felt like getting there, like Ender and Ciarte, Dansby Swanson, Guillermo Heredia, Kevin Smith are all expiring contract. Oh, sorry. Actually, a few of those were arbitration. Oh, I see. They're not free agents. They're entering ARB. I see. Okay. No, that has to be free agent. All right, I'm not sure how Spot Track wants me to read this.
I don't know.
No, it's free agent. He's heading into an ARB year, but he'll be a free agent in 2023. Yeah, so they could move on from some of those pieces as well, but it's an interesting point because again, to compare this to the 2016 Yankees, it's a similar position. The Yankees were a 500 team that year. I think they finished something like I don't know, like 87 and 76 or some shit like that. Like they weren't making the playoffs. They were a 500 team for all intents and purposes, and they had some expiring contracts. So they sold on Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs, and they sent what's his fucking name to the Indians? What's his fucking the lefty? Oh my God, what was his fucking name? He was with them for a few years afterwards. The reliever.
Oh, Andrew Miller.
Andrew Miller. That's when they got Clint Frazier. And obviously the Aroldis Chapman trade is how they got Gleyber Torres. So those trades worked out phenomenally for the Yankees. Even though Gleyber Torres has been struggling, Clint Frazier has been struggling. Still, they didn't miss either of those players and ended up getting Chapman back. So
Andrew Miller was a great trade that worked out for the Indians too.
Yeah, it really worked out both ways. Yeah.
Did take them to the World Series.
I mean, it's going to be because they're not, we're all expecting, I would think, we're all expecting to see teams like Texas maybe trading some talent away. The Twins very likely trading quite a bit of talent away. They're probably due for a rebuild with how much money they've given out in the past few seasons, expecting to be good and having it all just fall to shit this year. We're probably likely to see maybe the Nationals trade some stuff away. Maybe. If they don't pick up some games and early on in the second in the month before the trade deadline. The Cubs
see them panic selling Max Scherzer after seeing him get totally rocked by a relief pitcher making his debut.
I don't think there would be a panic sell. I think it would be them going, well, he's having a great year and he's getting old and we're probably not going to be good enough next year for him to matter for us as a team yet.
Thanks for playing along with my joke.
That was a wonderful storyline, though. I lived for that moment, especially because I had Yu Darvish make a start for me, and that saved me from having to eat that loss.
Oh, you Darvish. Why do you have to be hurt? You made a joke before the season started about the Yankees pitching coach coming over and it just fucking killing all of our pitchers. And then Joe Musgrove threw a no-hitter, and I was like, ha, in your face. And now we're here. And, well, why? Why? Because I rap about philosophy and me and my nana drinking a cup of tea.
Ain't no party like my nana's tea party. Hey, ho. Yeah. But anyway, Nationals, I guess, might move on from Scherzer. We're probably going to see the Cubs selling too. So we'll see if the Braves end up in that area. While we're talking about Darvish, do you want to talk about what this means for the Padres? As Corwin rolls his eyes and looks sad.
I think it's too early to tell, but it's not great. It's not bad. I'm not panicking. It's just concerning. I'm scared, but hopeful.
Mom, I want to go home.
Mom, pick me up. I'm scared.
Yeah. I mean, there's no good third place contender for the wild card spot in the National League as it stands right now. As I just said, the next nearest team to the third wild card is the Reds, and the Padres have a cool 6.5 games, if I'm reading the standings correctly, on the Reds. So they shouldn't have to worry too much, depending on the severity of Yu Darvish's hip issue, left hip inflammation. So, that could be anything as minor as he's just been working his body just too much because, throwing takes a lot out of your hips. It reduces a lot of your hip flexors and making your pivot into your like full hip facing position as you turn into your throwing motion, and also the extension of your leg to reach out into your I actually don't know what that stance is officially called. Your pitching stance? Fucking, I don't know. Horse kind of stance thing. Or it could be like arthritis. Who the fuck knows? Yeah, I mean, the body is a beautiful and horrible thing.
Yeah.
So
I have no information to add to this whatsoever.
yeah, and I mean, going into the All-Star break, you Darvish, if he hits the IL today, it says it does. It's retroactive to Friday. Okay, that's what I figured. Which means theoretically he's only going to miss a start, because that would take him off the IL, or be eligible to return from the IL like Monday or Tuesday of next week, the 19th or 20th. So chances are he might be doing this just to miss a start, because theoretically he'd be pitching the Padres' first game back from the All-Star break on Friday, since he's the ace of the staff. So this could just be a way to get a little bit of an extra break during the All-Star break. Or his leg could be needing to be amputated. Who the fuck knows?
Let's not speak that into existence.
Or his hip is tired from just slanging that massive dong around all over the mound. Happy about that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I am.
there you go.
That makes me very happy.
You go, you fucking jackass. Yeah, so we'll fucking see, I guess. Yeah, we can go for a little bit, but let's look at some standings. We obviously have the the midway update for our bold predictions that we have to do not next week, on Thursday. We'll be doing that on Thursday. Let's take a quick sneak a peek at the standings here to see how the teams are looking. Let's start in the AL East. As Boston currently sits on top of the division, 55-35. Tampa right below them at 53-36, a game and a half back. New York at 46-42, 8 games back. Toronto 44-42, 9 games back. And Baltimore 28-60, 26 games back. Corwin, at the midway point here, are you surprised by any of this?
I'm surprised that Boston's on top.
Oh, yeah.
Surprised the Yankees suck. Not terribly surprised with the Rays, but surprised they're doing as well as they are. So yeah, I'm pretty much surprised about every aspect of this, other than the Orioles sucking.
I'm actually surprised that the Orioles suck this bad. I would have assumed that they would be on pace to be slightly better than they were last season, and instead they are not. Their current record. Oh, actually, I'm missing a game for everybody because of today's game. So Boston actually 55-36, Tampa 53-37, Toronto 45-42, New York 46-43, and Baltimore 28-61. So Toronto actually is now ahead of the Yankees in the standings, with the same win percent, but due to tiebreakers. But yeah, if you had swapped Boston and New York's record, then I would go, yes, this looks right. But because they are where they are, I am surprised by the Yankees' inconsistency and by the Red Sox's consistency. But everything else seems to be about right. Toronto. Tampa's been killing it, which they just were in the World Series. One would expect them to still be good. And Baltimore's been bad, and Toronto's been middling. And I think you've got to expect Toronto to be middling until they figure out their pitching. Obviously, that team can rake, but they can't throw. So that's kind of important.
That is not wrong. I'd love to see all teams just have great pitching all the time, because that's fun to watch on TV. But boy, it is quite interesting seeing a team that is so strong in one area and so weak in the rest. Well, other.
Yeah, it is very lopsided, and it feels like it's never usually in quite that direction. But real quick, Toronto's 2020 record had them at a 42 win percent, 0.41666666. So we'll call that a 416.
What does that round up to?
417. You call that a 416 win, 417 win percent. In 2019, let's see, 54 divided by 162. So that was an even 333 win percent. The win percent heading into the All-Star break is 315. So bad. It's just really, really bad. It's literally their worst win percent since 2018. Granted, it's only the halfway mark, but yeah, it's not as bad as 2018 when they had a 290 win percent, but still not good. Anyway, keeping it chugging and moving. The Central.
You do chug often?
I chug every day, big baby. The Central Division is currently led by the Chicago White Sox at 54-35. Cleveland then follows it up at 45-42. Then Detroit at 40-51. Minnesota at 39-50, and Kansas City at 36-53. Cleveland being 8 games back of the division, with every other team much, much farther. Corwin, what do you think about this divisional standing?
Not nearly as surprising.
I'd say this one's pretty surprising because of how far down Minnesota is. I mean, if you had told me that at the halfway point, Minnesota would have a worse record than the Tigers, I wouldn't have assumed that Minnesota was this bad. I would assume that the Tigers were playing out of their gourds. And instead, Minnesota is chugging dick like it's going out of style.
I mean, I had the White Sox as the division leader here. I had Minnesota as a contender for the wild card spot, as the number 2 team. Detroit not being last and being third is definitely surprising. It really is just, you're right, totally right, that Minnesota is just kind of even this deep into seeing how bad they are this season, and it not just being a bad streak. It is wild how far they've fallen.
Which is, again, why they really should be sellers at the deadline, but a conversation for a different day. We'll take this into the AL West as Houston sits on top of the division 55-36, followed by Oakland at 52-40, Seattle at 48-43, LA over 500 by a game 45-44, and Texas at 35-55 in what might be the second best division in baseball as it stands today. Oakland is 3.5 games back of the division lead. Everyone else obviously worse off than that. Corwin, what do you think of these standings?
A little surprised that the Mariners, being as good as they are, kind of didn't really expect them to be, 5 games over 500. Didn't expect the Angels to be only 1 game over 500, but, Astros on top, not surprising. A little surprising that they've got an over, 600 winning percentage, but Athletics number 2, Rangers being dog shit. Not surprising.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would also say I'm surprised by how good the Astros are, because they were also a wild card team last season, much like the Yankees, but they took a big step forward to being who they should be. NL West. Nope. NL East. Fuck me. Mets at 47-40, Philly at 44-44, Atlanta at 44-45, Washington at 42-47, Miami at 39-50. Any surprises here in what has been a weird division recently?
I'm not surprised, because I always knew this division was going to be probably the closest running, and all teams kind of being within striking distance at this point, outside of even the Marlins, I would say, isn't surprising. The Braves being this bad definitely is. Mets surviving isn't terribly surprising, but let's be honest, it is a little surprising. Otherwise, pretty par for the course.
Yeah, I'm honestly not. You could have put these teams in almost any order, and I would have found a very believable rationale for why it was the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really not surprised by almost any of this. But we'll save that for another time. Real quick, NL Central, Milwaukee on top of the division, 53-39, Cincinnati 48-42, Chicago 44-46, St. Louis 44-46, and Pittsburgh 34-56. Corwin, Heller, are you surprised?
If you asked me a week ago when the Cubs were still kind of up on top, I'd say no. It's exactly what I would have expected. with the Cubs now being like the worst team in baseball, yes. But at the same time, it's not the craziest thing in the world. I mean, Brewers fully expected them to be there. Reds definitely having a better season, but somewhat expected them to be kind of flipped with the Cubs right now. Cardinals being where they are, Pirates being where they are, not surprising.
Yeah, this also feels like another one for me where you could have taken every team but the Pirates and put them in any order you wanted to, and I would again find a very believable rationale for why it was that order. So it's tough to be surprised when that's the case. All right, last one. The NL West currently being led by the San Francisco Giants at 57 and 32, followed by the Dodgers at 56 and 35, the Padres at 53 and 40, the Rockies at 40 and 51, and then the Arizona Diamondbacks at 26 and 66. Corwin, any big surprises for you here?
No, this is exactly how I predicted it to start the season. San Francisco Giants, clearly the best team in the NL, for sure. Kevin Gausman, best pitcher in baseball, undoubtedly.
We all knew this.
Yep, this was expected. I mean, fuck, the Giants are. I'm still waiting for it to come crashing down, but they've had the best record in baseball forever, or at least have been up there, in the hunt forever. I, I truly still do not understand how this is happening. Just everyone having career years, literally everyone having career years. It's insane. Um, the second biggest surprise is the fact that the Diamondbacks are truly incapable of winning a game.
That's certainly true. And yeah, I think if you put the Giants just, below the Padres, it would be the season everyone had predicted. And instead it's this garbage, which I don't even have anything against Giants fans. I just don't understand how you got this lucky, and I hate you for it. Because it's so incredible. It doesn't make any sense. So fuck your face. Fuck your whole face. Fuck your face. Fuck your face. As our Lord and Savior Lady Gaga would say. Um, yeah, we'll get more into, I guess, repercussions of everyone's standings and the diagnosis of why the Yankees are what they are and do what they do. I guess Thursday's episode or some shit, but we'll wrap it up here since we've been gone for a while. Corwin, Hunter, do you have anything else to say before we skedaddle out for this episode?
I'm excited for the second half of baseball. I'm excited we get a second half of baseball,
Yeah, the All-Star break really makes you thankful for what you got. Instead of people awkwardly suggesting on Twitter to have it move to the end of the season, like such treasured pastimes like the fucking Pro Bowl. Which every football fan famously watches and pays close attention to.
It should be at the end of the game. I don't care when it is. The fucking selections, like the actual naming of the All-Stars, should be at the end of the year for what matters.
Let's just they do have a second thing, but no one cares about it because it's not the Midsummer Classic. But anyway, all right, well, if you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at JuicingPod. If you want to hit us up via email, you can do so at juicingthenumbers@gmail.com. If you'd like to follow Corwin on Twitter, you can do so at Corwin Heller. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at Joshua D. Tracy. And until next time, y'all have a good one.
Bye.